Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Hands-On channel. I'm out here at my farm pond today getting ready to get in the canoe and do a little fishing, but I thought before I do that I would talk to some people. Recently I had a commenter come in on one of my prepping videos and they were talking about, hey, I get it, you're out in the country, you've got land, all this stuff, so it's a lot easier for you to prep. What would your advice be for someone living in the city in an apartment complex? I don't know what their whole story is, but I'm assuming it's a younger person. They're probably just out of school or just out of college or whatever, and getting their feet underneath them. And I thought it was a very good question, and I wanted to address that today. As I've been just walking around the property here, I've been thinking about back in the day. I didn't start out owning land. I didn't inherit this land. I had to work for it and pay for it through lots of hard work and many hours of doing things I didn't want to do to get to this point here where I am. And of course, my wife and I are both in our mid-40s, so we've probably got a pretty good jump on a lot of people. So oftentimes when I'm making these prepping videos, I'm talking to people like myself, and I overlook the entire group of new people that are coming in. So in this video, I want to address that and what would I do if I were living in an apartment or in the city somewhere. This person specifically said an apartment complex, so we're going to go with that as a backdrop. So if I were living in an apartment complex in 2022, obviously, as I've said in other videos, I would be trying to find a way to get out of that apartment complex. Every chance I could, I'd be looking for either a rental with a city-sized yard so that I could at least grow some things in my backyard, because at an apartment, you're very limited on what you can do. Perhaps you have a small balcony and maybe you could get away with doing or a little small porch, and maybe you could get away with doing like some 5-gallon bucket plants and things like that. And it won't be enough to feed you all year long, but it will help. It will help reduce the effects of a lot of this, hyperinflation we're all feeling right now. So I would be trying to focus my efforts on getting out of that situation as much as possible, as soon as possible, but I'd be realistic with my goals. I realize that, land has shot up in value. The housing market is very high right now, and it's very hard to get smaller starter homes and things like that. So I realize that that's going to be a problem for you. So what can you do in your apartment? If that were me, the first thing I would do is, when I had the extra money, I would go out to the grocery store and probably stop by a Walmart or a dollar store, and I would get several of these large Rubbermaid, is what I used to call them, the big Rubbermaid totes, the plastic totes with the lid that seal up relatively airtight. Then I would start investing in canned foods. Canned foods is the quickest, easiest thing to consume, so like your canned beans, your canned carrots, green beans, corn, everything you can imagine. But don't forget to include the canned meats, because even if you don't love to eat canned meats, and I get it, Spam isn't super delicious or whatever, canned chicken isn't as good as fresh, freshly baked chicken or whatnot, or freshly barbecued chicken on the grill, surely. I get it. But at the same time, it's still meat, and it's still pretty darn good, especially if you go a long period of time without any. So I'd be stocking up on canned meats, beans, rice. As far as dried goods, I'd be stocking up on rice and dry beans, things like that, lentils, other things like that will help. And they will store, as I said in that last video, beans will store for a lifetime. They say under the right conditions, white rice will store for up to 30 years if you put it in like Mylar vacuum packed bags or whatever. And I got some great comments generated on that last one, and I want to thank you all that came in there and informed me about some different things. I said that oatmeal would only last about a year, I believe it was, and someone came in and said they were eating oatmeal that was like 10 years old, but that's because they vacuum sealed it 10 years ago, and it's still safe to eat. It's how can you store these things is going to be a big factor in how long these things last. And I suggest, if you want to know more about that, go back and watch that last prepping video we put out, because we tried to cover a lot of that different stuff, and we're not going to do that here. This is for young preppers, people getting into it. So you've got food, obviously. If you're going to have dried food, the human body, even more than food, you need water. So I know you're probably thinking that water tap's going to always stay on, but what if it doesn't one day? And you can go about this a couple of different ways. You know, they make those big water cooler type bottles, the big blue ones. That's a great way to get into some water storage in an apartment setting. You could also probably get some smaller food grade water containers, like a 25 gallon or maybe I don't know if they're 25 or 30 gallon, but the smaller ones, they're about half the size of a 55 gallon drum. You could probably get away with putting one of those up in your apartment somewhere in a corner or in a closet and filling that up with tap water. I get it, city tap water is not the best, but one good thing about city tap water is they put chlorine in it, and that chlorine will help to increase the shelf life of that water. Still yet, I would probably exchange that water once a year. So if nothing happens, SHTF doesn't happen between the time you fill it up and next year, right? Go ahead and dump that water out, use it on your plants, whatever you can use it on, dump it down the drain if you have to, and then put fresh water in it. So that will help, you know, if nothing else, this stuff is all designed to give you peace of mind. But one of the reasons I'm talking about the carry totes and things like that is because if you're in an apartment setting, in a city setting, any kind of city setting, when things go down, they're obviously going to go down in the cities first. So when that happens, you're going to need to bug out of that location. So your philosophy is going to be a lot different than mine. My philosophy is bug in, you know, batten down the hatches and hold down the fort type of I can't say it, of a philosophy. But yours needs to be get out of Dodge, get out of town as quickly and as safely as possible with as much of your preps as you can take with you. Of course, depending on your local and state governmental laws and things like that, you're certainly going to need to pay attention to that, because this next one that I'm going to talk about it could mean life or death for you. And I don't want you to break any laws or anything like that, obviously. So pay attention to your local codes. But every prepper should have a way of defending their preps. So whether that be, I would recommend a firearm. I mean, bow and arrows and katanas and machetes and things like that, they're great when you're out of ammo, but until then, you should have the best way of defending yourself on hand. And you should have training in all of those things too. So you need to go to a gun range or whatever, find a local gun range that you could go to and rent different kinds of guns from them. It'll be a little bit more expensive. You'll have to buy their ammo and stuff like that. But if you do it, you'll be able to figure out, oh, I like this kind of gun. This is the kind of recoil I'm willing to put up with, things like that. So definitely want to be able to defend your own preps and yourself and your life and your family, right? I mean, so this is all important stuff, you know, but so you're going to have your food in bins. That could easily be loaded up into a car or a truck or something like that, and you could get out of town. But what if, when things go down, what if it's suddenly your city is under siege for whatever reason? Maybe it's gridlock, maybe it's economic collapse, maybe it's power grid failure on a mass scale. Who knows what it could cause it, right? Could even be something as serious as like a civil war. But suddenly your city is gridlocked, right? And you're stuck. You're not always stuck, but you might do better in a smaller type vehicle like a motorcycle. That's why in my shop I have several different vehicles to choose from. Even out in the country where I am, I know that there could be a point when the traffic is just so gridlocked that you won't be able to drive down it with a regular sized vehicle. But oftentimes you can drive down through there with a motorcycle. Or even cheaper than that, in my opinion not as good, but cheaper than that would be a mountain bike with some panniers, whatever they call them, the luggage bags, you know, the saddle bags you put on them, so you could put some of your preps in there. You're not going to be able to get everything out, but you get what you can and you get out of there. Now the next part of this plan is you have to have some place to go, because if you just will show up at a place like this and I don't know you, I'm going to assume that you're trying to come and take my goods away from me. I don't know that you're a good person or not, right? So for you to have a plan in place is going to be essential for your survival. Once you figure out how to get out of the city, and you might have to walk out of there, you might have to go as far as you can on your dirt bike or your mountain bike, and then you won't be able to go any farther, and then you'll have to abandon that and walk the rest of the way and get out of the danger zone, because I believe that the cities are going to be where the front lines of the battlefield. So you don't want to be there when that happens, right? So your best thing you can do would be make friends right now with a landowner, even if that's somebody in the suburbs. But it'd be better if you made friends with somebody that had a big chunk of land, you know, and then that way you could just kind of have a plan. Maybe you'd have to go over there and do some work for them. You know, you might have to go earn your spot there and really earn their trust, because they're not going to let just any old joker come out of the city and hang out there, because, you know, they've tried to give people the warnings along the way. So But I get it also. There are a lot of young people that just, they don't have that opportunity right now. They're starting out at the bottom, you know, they're trying to work their way up. So I'm trying to give you guys some ideas and some tips of how I would look at things if I were living in the city. For one, again, I'd be trying to get out of there and making that a pretty high on my priority list, because your chances of survival in the suburbs are way higher than they are in a city. And they're even higher than that if you've got a big chunk of land with a water source like I have here, and a place to farm and things like that, and implements and other things. So, you know, I mean, you do what you can with what you have available, right? So we all have to start somewhere. And again, I want to emphasize that my wife and I didn't just, you know, inherit this land and, you know, inherit all this stuff. We had to work at it and learn about this stuff along the way. And, you know, we've made some mistakes along the way, obviously, you know, just like you will. But the point is you're always putting one foot in front of the other. You're always progressing forward. In fact, our motto, our family motto, is keep moving. So there was a scene from one of the Riddick movies where they had to run from like point A to point B, and during the movie he keeps saying, keep moving, you know, in like the Vin Diesel voice, right? So anyways, that's kind of our family motto. Even when things are real low and just seem like they're impossible, we just keep moving. And oftentimes, like that old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. I mean, so none of this stuff's going to happen overnight. You're not going to just suddenly open the cabinet tomorrow and have a full stock, especially at today's prices. So do what you can within your budget, obviously, but it's as simple as going every time you buy something, buying duplicates of that thing and keeping one on the shelf and putting it away. That's more of a short-term philosophy. If you've got the funding, go out there and look at how much food you consume every month. You and your spouse or your partner or whoever you've got living with you, your kids or whatever, figure out how much food you guys consume every month, and then try to get 6 months supply built up on that. Start small like that, 3 to 6 months, you know, start small. If you can't afford 6 months or 3 months, start out with 1 month. Have 1 month of food that will keep you alive 1 month longer than with nothing, right? So, I mean, but you have to be smart about it, and don't buy things that are going to go to waste. Only buy things you're going to consume. And you may have to change your diet a little bit, you know. My wife and I, we eat a lot more beans and rice than we used to eat when we were younger, you know, but it's getting impossible, at least these days around my area. The prices on everything have gone so high, we don't even want to go out and order a pizza anymore. We're making everything at home from scratch. So I suggest you do that too, and that will save you a lot of money on your monthly food bills and stuff like that. So I don't want to go on too long here or overwhelm anybody, because it can be an overwhelming amount of information out there. This is just to get your feet wet, get yourself started. One of the best things that I said in this whole video is try to make friends with somebody else that's outside of the city in a safer area, that will allow you to maybe come out and do some work for them in exchange for, you know, a place if the SHTF ever happens, where you could come and just, you know, kind of maybe not live there forever, but come and, you know, kind of regather yourself and figure out what to do in the new world, the new world order or whatever, the Great Reset or whatever. So I know it's scary stuff, guys. He wouldn't believe how many videos I put out and then deleted, because I'm like, no, it's just sending too much of a negative vibe. I'm trying to send positivity out there so that we can make it through this together, because I believe we are stronger as a collective of individuals than we are as individuals by ourselves, like lone wolf philosophy. We do need to form groups of like-minded people, and that's very difficult to do in this day and age. So I suggest, you know, if you have a job, get to knowing your coworkers and stuff like that. If you hear one of them talk about, oh yeah, hey, I've got a farm out here, you know, that I work at, you might say, hey, I'd love to come and see that sometime, and just start making friends with that person. Hey, if you ever go on vacation, I could come over and take care of your chickens for you or whatever, you know, whatever the deal might be that would buy you some time, because that's what prepping is all about, is buying you some time. And hopefully it won't last forever and things will reboot and go back to some sort of normalcy before we all starve to death. So anyways, trying to keep it positive here, but you see how easy it is to go off down that path, because it's scary stuff, guys. Please prep, because it's up to you to save yourself. At the end of the day, it's up to you to save yourself. And use your resources, use other people. Don't be afraid to ask for help, but at the same time, have your own stuff together. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I'm glad to see new preppers are coming into the fold. just thinking along those lines will help you immensely in the future. I appreciate the question and I appreciate the comments every time, so I look forward to reading them. And until then, guys, I'm going to go out here and catch some fish before the mosquitoes carry me away. We'll see you next time.